Hey everyone, welcome to the channel for another Escape From Tarkov video. In this one, I've got the start of an updated release to my video series covering the top recoil focused builds at different price points for weapons in Tarkov. For this one, I'll be starting with an updated look at the HK416, one of the most popular assault rifles in the game, and going over my top picks for a budget focused build, a mid-tier build, and the fully juiced meta build. This updated series will take into account the new flea market restrictions that make it harder for low-level players to get top-tier parts, and new attachments like the RC2 suppressor, which makes for more cost-effective, low-recoil suppressed builds. So with that intro out of the way, let's take a look at the first build, a budget-focused 416 that can be created once you hit level 3 Peacekeeper, and I'll show you a few simple upgrades you can do to the basic build if you're willing to gamble on the flea market price. For this first build, I'm going to start by showing what I would call the closest thing you can get to a pure budget 416 build, which requires level 3 Peacekeeper and level 2 Mechanic and Skier. You really shouldn't be using the 416 before this level anyways, because you won't have access to any good ammo for it. Like the M4, the 416 is hard to make good on a budget at lower levels since the gun itself is pretty expensive, and many of the best attachments, particularly the barrels, are sold by level 3 and 4 traders. For this build, I'll first show the bare minimum setup and then give a few ideas on how you can upgrade it using the flea market. To start off, I'm just using a basic 416 purchased off the flea market for about 60,000 rubles with the default 14.5 inch barrel. The first part that I add is the PWS CQB compensator, which is sold by Skier level 3 but can generally be found on the market for around 12,000 rubles. Next, I add the Zenit RK4 grip from Skier level 2 for a bit of extra recoil control, and then I attach an X400 flashlight as my preferred tactical device. The stock on this build is the MFT BUS stock, which has a fairly nice price for a best-in-slot recoil attachment, and it's a great addition to any build that can use it. Finally, I used the Cobra reflex sight on this build simply for the cheap price and the extra 1% recoil reduction from using this sight. When this build is all put together, it comes out with 66 recoil and around 58 ergonomics for 105,000 rubles total. Like I said, this is the bare minimum for a budget 416 since the default barrel doesn't have the greatest recoil stats. One simple upgrade that I really like for this build is a barrel swap to the 16.5 inch 416 barrel, which is sold by Mechanic level 3, but you can also find this one on the market for between 25 to 35,000 rubles, which is about the same as the trader price. If you add this barrel, you can sell the default one back to Mechanic for about 17,000 rubles, which cuts the cost of the upgrade in half. And you bring the recoil down to 55 points with this one simple change and only bump the price up to 120,000 rubles. Finally, you can also swap the muzzle device for the Surefire SF3P compensator and the Surefire RC2 suppressor, which lets you run quiet and brings the recoil down to a solid 50 points. This suppressor usually has a good price on the market, and this brings the total cost up to about 135,000 rubles. Personally, I think it's always best to upgrade the barrel on your 416, but I figured I would also show the pure budget version of this build as well. Next up for this video, I'll be taking a look at a very solid mid-tier 416 build that's actually closer to being a budget meta build than anything else. The 416 doesn't really have a lot of good mid-range upgrades, so this build does require Mechanic level 4 and level 40 to set up. But honestly, it's close to being on par with the meta 416 build for almost 100,000 rubles less on the price tag. Up until you unlock the 20-inch barrel at level 40, the upgraded budget build with the 16.5-inch barrel is probably your best bet. This one is pretty great for the price tag though, and this is one of my favorite HK builds. Like I said, this build uses the 20-inch 416 barrel, which is sold by Mechanic level 4, and I highly recommend that you don't buy this barrel on the flea market because it's usually 90,000 rubles or more. Once you get this barrel, sell the old one back to Mechanic, and the barrel upgrade only costs you about 23,000 rubles total. Next, the muzzle device on this one is the Bulletech ST6012 compensator, which is the top tier 556 compensator. I'll go over my pick for a suppressor at the end of this build, along with the price difference. Next up, I've got the HK extended quad rail handguard, which is only about 12,000 rubles for Mechanic level 3 and gets you some extra stats plus 4 rails for attachments. The grip on this build is the Zenit RK1 from Skier level 3, which is my choice for a mid-range recoil focused grip. I also have the X400 flashlight on here, which is my main choice for a tactical device. For the pistol grip, I upgraded to the Hera Arms HG15, which is quite cheap once you hit level 40 and gets you a decent little ergonomics boost. For the stock, I have the same choice as the last build, the MFT BUS stock, which is a very cost-effective recoil-focused attachment. Finally, the last part on this build is the sight, and I'm just using an EOTech hollow sight on this one, which is my preferred close to mid-range optic, and you can use your preference here. You can also add some extra parts like the MBUS iron sights or a Raptor charging handle for the extra ergonomics, but I generally just leave those off on the mid-range build to cut costs. When this build is all put together, you're looking at 45 recoil and about 60 ergonomics for a total cost of around 170,000 rubles, which I think is pretty solid for the price tag. For a suppressor choice, I highly recommend the Surefire SF3P compensator with the Surefire RC2 suppressor, which you can find on the market for about 30,000 rubles. With this attached, the build has 42 recoil and 55 ergonomics for a total cost of around 185,000 rubles. All things considered, I really love this mid-range build, with the one big downfall being that you don't unlock the most important attachment until level 40. Next up, we move into the top tier HK416 build, a setup that shoots so smooth that it feels like an airsoft gun. This build is pretty popular and nothing really major has changed about it in the 12.8 patch except for a cheaper suppressor choice if you're willing to lose 1% recoil control. To start off, you're going to need the 20-inch 416 barrel at mechanic level 4, same as the last build. The first major change is the muzzle device, with this one using the wave muzzle brake and wave suppressor to get best in slot recoil reduction and a suppressor at the same time. This is a very expensive combo, but you get what you pay for. Next, the handguard is the HK MRS 14-inch handguard, sold by mechanic level 3. This one has best in slot recoil stats for the 416 and it takes key mod rails to add attachments. For the grip, the overall best option is the Hera Arms CQR grip because it combines high recoil stats with high ergonomics and is overall the best option on any handguard that it can be used with. For the tactical device, as always, I add an X400, but you can swap this if you prefer straight up lasers or IR lights. For the pistol grip, I actually personally don't like using the HK416 grip because it's very expensive, and overall I don't think it needs to be added when you already have the CQR foregrip for extra ergonomics. So I like to use the Naro Arms Graal S pistol grip instead, sold by Peacekeeper level 4. The stock on this build is the HK-E1 stock, also sold by Peacekeeper level 4, giving you the same recoil as the BUS, but with a higher ergonomics bonus. Finally, there's a few finishing touches to bring up the ergonomics. First, a pair of MBUS backup iron sights, and then I also like to add the Raptor charging handle for some more ergonomics. When this build is all put together, it gets down to 37 recoil and 74 ergonomics, for a total cost of around 260,000 rubles. It's quite expensive, but it shreds other players, and it's definitely worth the cash. However, I do have an alternate build that cuts the cost significantly, starting with the Surefire compensator and suppressor combo, which save you about 30,000 rubles compared to the Wave. Next, I swap the foregrip to the RK1, which has the same recoil stats but less ergonomics and a cheaper price by about 8,000 rubles. Finally, I switch the stock to the MFT BUS stock, shaving about 6,000 rubles there and only losing 2 ergonomics. With these changes, the build comes out with 39 recoil and 65 ergonomics for about 210,000 rubles total. I think losing 2 points of recoil is worth saving 50,000 rubles, but that's your call. Well, that about covers it for this video, going over my picks for the top 3 HK builds in the 12.7 to 12.8 patch. The HK is definitely one of the strongest weapons in the game, and hopefully these builds work out for you with a few personal tweaks to suit your playstyle. Like I said in the intro, I'll be updating all of my top 3 builds videos from the last wipe, and I'll be creating some new ones for other weapons that I didn't cover last time, so let me know down in the comments what weapons you'd like covered next. Thanks for checking out the video. I've got links to my Twitch stream, Discord server, and Patreon page down below for anyone interested. And until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City.